Watch anyone move up in any hierarchy. The first thing they learn is not how to lead. It is how to make their boss feel larger by comparison. Most explanations of power assume the system is unfair and that explaining it is the same as protesting it. That is not the position of this show. The position of this show is that hierarchy is a machine. The machine has parts. The parts have predictable behavior. When you can name the parts, you can predict what the machine will do next. The first part is architecture. Hierarchies are not random. Across species, cultures, organizations, and centuries, they assemble themselves into the same shape. A small top, a wider middle, a wide base. Each layer maintains its position by performing two tasks. It controls the visibility of the layer below it, and it performs deference to the layer above it. That is the entire structure. Two tasks, repeated at every level. The pyramid you have been drawing on whiteboards for decades is a description of who is allowed to be seen. A worker is permitted to be seen by the supervisor. The supervisor is permitted to be seen by the manager. The manager is permitted to be seen by the director. By the time information reaches the executive, it has been filtered through 6 people whose jobs, in part, are to decide what the executive is allowed to look at. None of those 6 people will tell you that this is their job. They will say their job is reporting, or coordination, or alignment. The function is filtration. The system requires it. This is the central claim we'll be exploring today. Hierarchy is not held together by money, force, or talent. It is held together by the management of visibility. Wherever you are in any hierarchy right now, the question that determines your future is not how good you are. It is who is allowed to see you, when, and in what light. There is a phrase from Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, Law 1. Never outshine the master. Greene presents this as advice. It is not advice. It is a description of what already happens when someone fails to do it. The mechanism is older than the phrase. It is older than courts and corporations. It runs on something neuroscientists call status threat. When a high-status person observes a subordinate displaying competence in front of an audience, the high-status person's amygdala fires before any reasoning occurs. The reaction is the same one their nervous system would produce if a stranger entered the room holding a knife. The threat is rank loss. The body does not distinguish between physical and social rank loss. They run on the same circuit. This is why competent subordinates get fired. Not because anyone decided they were dangerous, because someone with more power had a body reaction they did not consciously experience as a body reaction, and then, weeks later, found a reason to remove them. The architecture defends itself the way an immune system defends a host. Not by deliberation, by recognition. The system flags visibility paired with competence as foreign tissue and produces an inflammatory response. The subordinate experiences this as office politics. It is not politics, it is biology, packaged as paperwork. There are 2 implications worth marking now because the rest of the season will build on them. First, visibility is not neutral. Most people treat visibility as a resource. They want more of it. They build personal brands. They post their wins. They put their names on documents. Visibility, in a hierarchy, is a ration. The system permits a fixed amount per layer. If you exceed your ration, the system corrects. Second, competence is not safety. The folk theory of careers says that good work protects you. It does not. Good work performed inside the visibility ration that your superior assigned you protects you. Good work that makes your superior look smaller does not protect you. It marks you. The exit from this trap is not to be less competent. It is to be illegible. The most successful subordinates in any large organization develop a craft of producing visible results that read as the superior's results. Tim Cook did this at Apple for 2 decades. He executed at a level Steve Jobs could not match operationally, and he framed every output as the realization of Jobs' vision. 17 years after Jobs' death, Cook is still saying it. He is not lying. He is operating the architecture. August 17, 1661. The Château of Vaux-le-Vicomte, southeast of Paris. Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister of France, throws a party for the king. 6,000 guests. A dinner served by Vatel, the most famous chef in Europe. A new play by Molière, performed for the first time. Fireworks designed by Italian engineers shot from the artificial lake. A chateau built faster, larger, and more refined than anything in the royal portfolio. The king, Louis XIV, is 22 years old. The party is a triumph. Fouquet has spent more than 1 million livres of his own money on the construction. The architecture is by Leveau. The gardens are by Lenôtre. The interior is by Lebrun. Within 4 years, all 3 of those men will be working for the king on a project called Versailles. But on this night, they are still Fouquet's. The king watches the fireworks from a balcony. He congratulates his host. He leaves around 3 in the morning. The chronicles record him as gracious. 3 weeks later, Fouquet is arrested in Nantes by a young captain of musketeers named Charles d'Artagnan, the same D'Artagnan who would later be fictionalized by Alexandre Dumas. The charge is financial misconduct. Fouquet had, in fact, been mixing royal funds with his own for years, as had every finance minister before him. That is not why he was arrested. He was arrested because, on the night of August 17th, he had performed a level of taste, wealth, and access that the king did not yet possess. Voltaire, writing a century later, summarized the night in one sentence. At 6 in the evening, Fouquet was the king of France. By 2 in the morning, he was nothing. Fouquet spent the rest of his life in the fortress of Pignerol. 19 years in solitary. He died there in 1680. Louis hired Fouquet's architects, gardeners, and decorator. Versailles, completed 20 years later, is an explicit response to Vaux le Vicomte. Larger, more expensive, more refined. The king built the bigger party. This case is famous because it is clean. The cause is visible, the effect is visible. The mechanism connecting them is visible. But the mechanism is not historical. It is operational. It is happening this week in your organization in language that does not look like a fortress. The modern version of Fouquet's party does not require a chateau. It requires one slide and a deck. A senior engineer at a Fortune 500 technology company solves a problem the executive team has been failing to solve for 3 quarters. The fix is elegant, fast, and saves the company an amount of money in the 7 figures range. She presents it in a quarterly review. The room is full of executives, including her boss's boss. The fix gets a round of applause. 3 people approach her after the meeting. One of them is the chief technology officer. He says, on the record, that this is the kind of thinking the company needs more of. Within 90 days, her project is moved to a different team. Her scope is reduced to maintenance work. Her boss begins describing her, in performance reviews, as someone with execution problems. 18 months later, she leaves. By then, the executives who applauded her have stopped responding to her email. This is a true pattern. The names are aggregated from interviews and exit data published in 2022 and 2024 by organizational researchers studying high-performer attrition in mid to large enterprises. But each of you knows a version of this story personally. You know the engineer. You know what happened to her. You may know it because you watched it happen, or because it happened to you, or because you have been the boss whose body reacted before your mind did. The engineer's mistake was not the work. It was the visibility. Specifically, the visibility paired with the implicit comparison. By solving in 1 quarter what the executive team had failed to solve in 3, she did not just produce value. She produced a record. The record read, in the executive's own perception, as evidence of his inadequacy. The architecture interpreted her as foreign tissue. 18 months of slow-motion correction followed. Note the pattern. The executive team did not convene to decide she was a threat. The system does not work that way. They each, separately, began to find reasons to deprioritize her work, reduce her access, and document her flaws. Each individual move was rational. The aggregate was elimination. This is what makes the architecture difficult to expose. It looks, from inside, like 1,000 small business decisions. From outside, it looks like a single immune response. The dark version of this case is not that hierarchies are unfair. The dark version is that the engineer's removal made the team function better by the team's own internal metrics. The boss's anxiety dropped, coordination increased, collaboration scores went up. The team was, briefly, a happier place to work. The cost of that happiness was the loss of the person who had actually solved the problem the team was supposedly built to solve. Hierarchies do not select for the competent. They select for the legible. Competence is allowed in proportion to how easily it can be re-narrated as the superior's competence. Anything beyond that ration is corrected. The architecture is not limited to corporations. It is the same mechanism in 5 other places, with different costumes. In academic departments, the visibility ration is enforced through co-author order, conference invitations, and grant credit. A graduate student who publishes a single author paper that scoops their advisor will not finish their PhD with that advisor. The advisor will not phrase it that way. The advisor will say the student is not yet ready, or needs to broaden their methodology, or should consider a different lab. The function is the same. In military units, the visibility ration is enforced through who is allowed to brief upward. A junior officer who routes information past their immediate superior, even with good intentions, even when the information is correct, will be removed from positions of trust. The phrase used is lacks command discipline. The function is the same. In families, the visibility ration is enforced through who is allowed to be the favored child. The child who outperforms the parent in domains the parent claims, in athletics, in academics, in social life, will discover that the parent's praise becomes thinner over time, and that small criticisms accumulate. The phrase used is, "We just want what is best for you." The function is the same. In friendships, the visibility ration is enforced through what gets celebrated. The friend who experiences a sharp asymmetric upgrade in income, attractiveness, or status will find their friend group quietly reorganizing around them. Some friends drift. Others compete. Few stay neutral. The phrase used is, "We just grew apart." The function is the same. In creative scenes, music, comedy, art, the visibility ration is enforced by the people who were almost famous 5 years before you. The almost famous gatekeepers cannot block the actually famous, but they can block the rising. They review you. They exclude you from rooms. They give you notes that protect their own ceiling. The phrase used is, "The work needs more time." The function is the same. In all 5 cases, the surface explanation is reasonable. The mechanism beneath the surface explanation is the same as Louis correcting Fouquet. The host's body registered a threat to rank, and the architecture produced a corrective response. What changes between cases is the timeline and the costume. The Bastille becomes a deferred PhD. The fortress becomes a "we just grew apart." The arrest becomes a smaller scope on your next project. A reasonable listener, by this point, may want to know why the architecture survives. If it punishes the most competent, why does it not collapse? Why are corporations not run by the people who actually do the work? The architecture survives because the people inside it benefit from it more than they suffer from it. Not equally, but on average. The supervisor who eliminates the threatening subordinate gains rank security in the moment. The director who tolerates that supervisor gains a coalition. The executive who blesses that director gains predictability. Each layer is paid in stability. The cost, the loss of the subordinate's full output, is socialized across the company, the customer, and the shareholder. None of those parties were in the room for the decision. This is the engineering principle of every functioning hierarchy. Concentrated benefits, distributed costs. The benefits accrue to the people defending the architecture. The costs accrue to people who do not have a vote. There is a reasonable extension of this point that this show will return to in later episodes. If the architecture survives because of who pays the costs, the only thing that reliably changes hierarchy is a change in who is allowed to vote. Not better leaders. Not better values. A change in the cost bearer. Unionization, regulation, market exits, public exposure, defection. Anything that takes the hidden cost and makes it land on the person who set the policy. Until then, the architecture continues to defend itself because, from the inside, defending it is rational. 3 working observations. First, if you are competent and you feel stalled, you are most likely operating in a system that is functioning correctly. The architecture is not malfunctioning. It is processing your visibility. The error is not in your performance. The error is in the assumption that performance is what is being measured. What is being measured is your effect on the rank security of the person above you. Second, the cure is not to be invisible. Invisibility produces a different problem, which is the second episode of this season. The cure is to make your visibility legible as your superiors. This is not deception, it is translation. You will see this craft executed at world-class level in every long-tenured second-in-command in business, politics, and military history. Third, once you can see the architecture, you cannot unsee it. This is the cost of this show. By the end of Season 1, several relationships in your life will look different to you. Some will not survive the new resolution. The show takes no position on whether that is good or bad. It is descriptive, not prescriptive. The architecture was already there. You were just not looking at it. Next episode. The mechanism that, in this architecture, beats every other mechanism. Concealment. Why the person who hides their strategy outlives the person who broadcasts it. Why visibility is the entry-level error and silence is the senior craft.